Hello. Welcome back to Dubliners 2019. I'm doing a VR, video response today to Brian at Bookish and Amy at the Dusty Shelves. They're two videos on the story Grace. Brian touched on simony, the simoniacs that appear in Dante in the Divine Comedy. Grace has a lot to do with the Divine Comedy. Grace was at first going to be the last story in Dubliners, so it bookends with the sisters in a lot of ways. And it was Joyce's favorite story before the dead. Now, Amy, so we're going to talk about simony in the church and that, but also I'd like everyone to think about money and how it depends in every story in Dubliners. Think back, Araby, the kid with the money, waiting for his dad to get home to give him the money to finally make it to the bazaar. Who else? Evelyn. It was all about money and her father and how she had to crimp and save to make the budget, and that was a real pro for her leaving with Frank. We've been doing the stories out of order, but Clay, remember Maria, and how she saved the money to buy the cakes and then left the cakes on the train with the drunk man kind of chatted her up. So we'll talk about all that. Amy brings up the point about this man, Harford, who Kernan in a blackout doesn't remember. And Harford appears at the end. He's the guy who we're sure that he loaned Kernan money, or Kernan owes him money. And now maybe did Harford push Kernan down the stairs? And I wanted to ask Brian too. You were over there, Brian, in '96, and remember those? You'd see WC for water closet, and then some of the pubs you'd had to go down into, hell, inferno. And '96 is 100 years later than these stories, so you can imagine. But remember those troughs where, the urinals are just troughs to piss in, And so Kernan's taking a nosedive down there, bites off half his tongue. Welcome back. These are pages of Grace before and after my annotations. Yes. I've got my thinking cap on. So, and it's always Irish. Always St. Pat's Day. Big hard books. So, little prep here. The Simoniacs. Who is that? That's Simon Magus, right? And he's one of the Pope Boniface is in there. It's right on the cover. They're the ones buried out like upside down with their legs hanging out. See? Page numbers and all that. I decided I'm not going to really get into the Dante stuff, besides basically the story's divided into 3 parts. I swear I'm going to write a paper on the rule of threes in Joyce, because they're all over. So with Dante, of course, in the Divine Comedy, it's Inferno, Purgatory, Paradiso. Now, there's all kinds of stuff online. It's so great. You go back to the James Joyce Quarterly to like the 50s and 60s with just Grace alone, with Dante and William Blake, Thomas Aquinas. Joyce was into Aristotle more than Plato, and I think there's people that can get into that better than I can. It doesn't interest me. What I'm kind of saying here is that you can go as far or as deep into Joyce as you want to. We can take this story as just a little 3-part cursory story about, the guy messes up, he's a drunk, his friends do an intervention, take him to the retreat, and, a little joke I made up. This is go to a Dublin intervention and a tray of stout and bottles and a pint of special Irish whiskey breaks up. I mean, this is some kind of intervention, we'll get into that. Yeah, Jonathan Swift in here, all kinds of parodies. You can see that there's all kinds of postmodernist theory, all kinds of feminist theory, all kinds of queer theory. I might put some links to articles, I might not. I found it interesting how an idea, postmodernist idea, is to start backwards in Joyce's work. So you start with Finnegan's Wake, and move on to Dubliners, because Dubliners is not an easy ticket. It's not an easy little ride, is it? I'm telling you though, the easiest, fastest way to Ulysses is through Dubliners. It really is. So I get a kick out of people who think it's easy or whatnot. So grab your text and let's dig in. We've got 3 main characters, right? 3 guys. We got Tom Kernan, the guy who takes a swan dive. Then we got Jack Power. He's the longtime friend and kind of enabler. He's a rising star in the Royal Irish, I can't even pronounce it, Constabulary. Just call it the RIC. RIC. They were British forces. They patrolled Belfast and Dublin and I think Derry. Joyce tells you they have different descriptions. Power looks like Shakespeare, so he's got like a round kind of face. Martin Cunningham is the guy. Now, you know that Dubliners had a hard time getting published because of some bad words, or the word bloody, or insults to the Queen, or blasphemy. It also got into trouble for using real people and places, not real names. He covered up the names, but these are real people. McCoy is an interesting character. He was that's kind of like Bloom. Several characters are a Bloom composite, but McCoy is one. He's like Jewish. He's a canvasser of ads. He like a salesman for a newspaper. They all appear in Ulysses. Martin Cunningham quite often. McCoy appears. I don't want to digress too much. Tom Kernan, Jack Power, Martin Cunningham, and McCoy. So that's 4. 5 is going to be, what's his name? Fowley, the grocer, who brings the special whiskey and the stout. Kind of interesting. Grace is mentioned 3 times in here. The word grace, I'll point those out. I think the second time is with he says grace, and Kernan owes the grocer money too. Kernan probably owes 3 people money, you know. But the saying is, I'm thinking, if he can forgive Kernan for, maybe God can forgive Kernan too, or something like that. Okay, there's 3 primary definitions for the word grace too. 1, salvation through favor with God. 2, elegance and movement, like a ballet, grace. And 3, a period of postponement for money due, grace period. So, and those all have factors in the story. She's a enabler, she's a mothering type, really takes care of them. Okay, so basically, I think the opening is pretty straightforward, right? The constable is, he's twirling his mustache. He's a stereotype, typical character. How Joyce uses Kernan's bit his tongue off so he can't pronounce C's or M's. A doctor like this, and Kernan is incorrigible. I mean, he's wanting another drink, and they're basically saying no. Another time. Okay, grace, the first time it's mentioned is on right when Mr. Kernan was a commercial traveler of the old school, which believed in the dignity of his calling. He had never been seen in the city without a silk hat of some decency and a pair of gaiters. By grace of these 2 articles of clothing, he said, a man could always pass muster. Mrs. Kernan makes it, he's been away since Friday, drinking. So he's coming back. The time is 9:30. This is how you can dig deep into Joycean stuff. So 9:30, right? If you Genesis, that Adam was 930 years old. Genesis 5.5. 5, chapter 5. So what? I missed that in all my minutia. Sometimes you can write too much, I mean, you really can, especially for these little videos. Now, let's just skip to, I think everything's pretty straightforward. I don't think it's a stretch to say that the Kernan sex life was mute. They have kids. They don't tell you how many kids they had. They mention how they're ill-behaved. They've been married 25 years, silver anniversary. I think he used to be violent with her before, but she put her foot down. Oh my Lord. This is going to be in 2 parts, people. So, Kernan's employer is used to him being drunk. He sent a letter in there. He was the type who, Mrs. Kernan would have called in an excuse for him. Let's see, the father mentioned here will appear as Father Conroy, who's the priest at this church. Gabriel Conroy's brother. Out of this, it's not Hiberno English, but he had never been violent since the boys had grown up, and she knew that he would walk to the end of St. Town. He's a good worker, he's a provider. But he had never been violent since the boys. That's not saying that he's never been violent. He was quite unconscious that he was a victim of a plot. Well, the 3 guys, Mr. Cunningham, Mr. McCoy, and Mr. Power, they told Mrs. Kernan their plot. She said, go for it. It's an intervention, right? In Ireland, they have a thing called the Temperance Society, the Teetotalers, the TT, taking the pledge, swearing off drink, and it's true. You don't know. I don't know why I was surprised, because I'm an ignorant American. But when I went over there, I was surprised at people not drinking. In fact, I had a friend who would drink this orange fizzy soda all the time, or he would drink cider. You know, I've had cider. They have cider. All it's common now. But anyhow, I just scratched the surface. But I promise you, part 2 will go by faster. You know, Joyce made up words, a lot of words, and we use them today. Some of the words like quark in physics. A quark is from Finnegan's Wake. I think 3 quarks for Master Mark. Emalia comes from Finnegan's Wake, and in this story, you'll see at the end, if you stick around, part 2, Joyce actually predicts Trump and the presidency of Trump in the story. So come back. Thank you for your comments. And I know there's a lot of interest in Joyce because I get email about it and how people are hesitant to, they think it's too hard, you know. And you get what you pay for it. You get what you put into it. Don't you? Thanks.